Week 4 begins tonight in the NFL as we have the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. Kickoff is at 8:20 Eastern. In this video, we're going to discuss the key to victories for each team and why tonight's game might go quite differently than most people think. So let's get into the video. We've talked quite a bit about the Jacksonville Jaguars this season, probably just because they have the number 1 overall pick and the quarterback that has been considered for years to be a franchise savior no matter where he goes. Well, 3 games into his NFL season, he's currently 0-3, and the Jaguars look completely lost. I don't blame anything the Jaguars, or Trevor Lawrence, I should say, anything Trevor Lawrence has done completely on him. He has a rookie head coach, as well as being a rookie himself. And the Jaguars team overall just isn't talented. There's a reason they went 1-15 last year, and you can't really expect one quarterback to be able to change a culture by himself in 3 games. Now, Trevor Lawrence, despite having the 7 interceptions and still throwing 2 interceptions last weekend against the Cardinals, he has looked like he's gotten more comfortable sitting in the pocket. He's gotten more chemistry with his receivers. He is looking better every week, even though the scores may not show that. And that's really what you want to see out of a rookie quarterback. So I think the future is still really bright for him. I think some people have written him off already. But tonight is going to be his first primetime game as they're taking on the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. This game, I think, is going to be quite differently than people think, just because if you look at the spread for the betting, the Bengals are favored currently by 7.5, and 7.5 is a lot of points. I know when a spread is that high, I currently don't know which direction to go, just because, like I said, 7.5 is more than a touchdown. But then sometimes when a team is dominant, they win by 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 12 points, 13 points. So it's really hard. But when the game's like 4.5, 3.5, 2.5, you're like, oh, I know who's going to win. I think they'd cover the spread. So sometimes taking the favorites at like the 7.5, for example, like the Bengals, is not always so easy. Especially with the Jaguars just looking more like a team over the last 3 weeks. I mean, week 1 going into Houston, not everyone thought they would win. I think people did expect them to win because there were so many issues with the Texans. But like I said, the Jacksonville Jaguars are not a talented team right now. They have talented players at certain positions, of course, but overall they're not a great team. The Texans probably have more talent across the board than the Jaguars do. And we saw the Jaguars lose by 16 points that game. So I think that kind of, started to sway people like, oh, that's not what we want to see from Trevor Lawrence, the franchise savior. I think that could be put a lot on Urban Meyer too. It's also his rookie year, like I said. Even though he's been a phenomenal college coach for a long, long time, the NFL is a completely different game, and he's going to learn that first. And then they go against a really tough Jaguars team in week 2. And did I say Jaguars? I meant to say they went against a really tough Broncos team in week 2. And the Broncos beat them by 10 points. Again, Trevor Lawrence doesn't have the greatest game ever. He throws 2 interceptions on that game and has 118 yards. And the Jaguars lose by 10, like I said. But that was his worst game, I would say, even though, like against the Cardinals, he had 2 interceptions again. In week 1, he had 3 interceptions. Against the Broncos is the first time Trevor Lawrence looked lost. It was the first time where he was throwing the ball and just it seemed like he wasn't seeing the defenders. And that's what happens when a rookie quarterback plays such a talented defense. The Broncos have played 3 teams so far, and all 3 quarterbacks have looked completely lost. They've dominated all 3 games. However, those games were against the Giants, the Jaguars, and the Jets, 2 of them being a rookie quarterback, the other one being a quarterback that people really don't know how he is yet still. Trying to discover that still after 3 years. So you got to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but overall, they have a lot of talented players on that Broncos defense, so it makes sense that his worst game would be against the best defense he's played so far. This Bengals defense tonight is nowhere close to the skill level that Broncos defense is. They have added key pieces, but let's not forget, Trevor Lawrence was the number 1 pick this year because the Jaguars were the worst team last year. Well, 2020 Joe Burrow was the number 1 overall pick because the Bengals were the worst team in 2019. So we can't expect the Bengals to be a much better team when they're only 2 years removed from being the worst team in the NFL as well. Now, they have added key pieces on defense, like I said. They got Von Bell from the Saints, for example. And then on offense, they obviously have Joe Mixon, who's progressing really well. First time in his career, he's the 100% premier back. Giovanni Bernard, who he's shared carries with his entire career, signed with Tampa Bay in the offseason, so he's gone. So it's literally just Joe Mixon now. Obviously, Joe Burrow was hurt at the end of last season, so we didn't really get to see him after the first 2 weeks where he did look pretty good. And then they drafted Joe Burrow's teammate in LSU that they've had a connection for a long time, Jamar Chase, and he's probably right now the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year through 3 weeks. He's 4 touchdowns in 3 games. So the Bengals overall do look like a much better team. The only week that the Bengals have struggled so far is when they played a really talented Bears defense. And I think that's anytime the Bengals play a talented defensive line and defensive front 7 in general, I think that's where we're going to really see them struggle, just because the Bengals don't have an offensive line, and that's the weak point of that team. That's the thing that the Bengals are going to have to work on if they want to have success in the NFL. They're currently sitting at 2-1. Week 1, they played the Vikings. That went into overtime. That was a really close game. The Bengals could have won that in the fourth quarter. They were winning in the fourth quarter. They give up the lead. It's tied. They go into overtime. The Bengals are able to win it there. And then week 2, like I said, against the Bears, the Bengals don't have an offensive line. Joe Burrow throws 3 interceptions, probably just because of, him running away from the defenders every time, trying to make something happen. And then last week they played the Steelers, and the Bengals looked really well. Were really good against the Steelers. The Steelers also looked really bad, so I don't know if we could say the Bengals looked that great or if it was really the Steelers beating themselves. It kind of looked both ways, to be honest. However, Joe Burrow, despite not looking great, we know what he's capable of. We saw it last year. We've seen flashes of it this year. He has played 2 good defenses so far in the Bears and the Steelers. The Steelers game, I think, would have went completely differently. Like I said, the Bengals have no offensive line, and 4 of the defensive linemen for the Steelers were out. So that really helped the Bengals, I would say. But Joe Burrow has the capabilities to do some damage. And if you look at the Jaguars defense, they've given up almost 300 yards passing to all 3 quarterbacks they've played. They have given up 300 yards to 2 of them, and then to Tyrod Taylor in week 1, they gave 291 yards up. So basically 300 yards. They don't have a good passing defense. They also don't have a good rushing defense, which is going to help the Bengals tremendously tonight, as Joe Mixon has looked really good as the full-featured premier back for the Bengals. He's rushed for over 100 yards once already, and then he had, I think it was 69 yards, and then 90 yards last week against the Steelers. So he's going to be, I think both Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon are going to be feasting all over this Jaguars defense. And I think the only reason that this game can be kept close is if the Jaguars offense shows up. I know their rookie offense with a new head coach, new coaching staff in general. Their running back's only in his 2nd year, and he was a 6th-round draft pick. But he's looked great ever since his rookie year last year. So I think that's where we're really going to... And like I said, we've seen the Jaguars offense progress each week. So I think against a Bengals defense that's not that strong, but, it does have some pieces, we could really see if Trevor Lawrence could get something going in his first primetime game. Obviously he's going to be excited to try to put something on for the world, as all eyes will be on this game tonight. It's the only game on. It always is for Thursday Night Football. It's always all eyes on, as a rookie quarterback, he's going to want to make something happen. Urban Meyer is going to want to, show something to the world that he's not just a college coach. I think that's really all we could say. The Bengals offense is good. The Jaguars offense has the potential to be good tonight. And I really think that the Bengals offense is just going to destroy that Jaguars defense. We have not seen the Jaguars defense do anything. They can't stop the run. They've given up, besides against the Cardinals, they've given up practically 100 yards per game. And against the Cardinals, that was the first time we really were able to see them stop the run, but Chase Edmonds and James Conner sharing the backfield is much differently than Joe Mixon. So I don't think they're really going to be able to stop him tonight. And let's look at the betting lines. Like I said, -7 is a lot to give up. However, I do think this Bengals team can cover it if there's going to be a team to cover it, because I don't trust the Jaguars to cover the 7.5. They have not been able to cover it once this season yet. Obviously, like I said, they lost by 16 in week 1. They lost by 10 in week 2, and they lost by 12 in week 3. They actually haven't even gotten to covering 7.5 in a game yet this season. And I don't think the Texans are a more talented team than the Bengals are, to be honest. So I would definitely, I would not take the Jaguars plus 7.5. I'm still iffy on if I would take the Bengals minus 7.5, but if I were to go a certain way, it would definitely be Bengals minus 7.5. Some other things that I think are good in the game. The over is currently at 46, over under. I would take the over. Like I said, I think this game is going to be all offense, if anything. I don't really think either defense is strong enough to make the game a low-scoring game. I know the Jaguars can have a bad offensive game, and that would help the Bengals defense out. But I really think it's going to be an offensive exhibition. So the 46 was actually kind of surprising to me. I would go over. And the other one that I would really consider is Joe Mixon rushing yards are currently at 87.5. He's passed that 2 out of his 3 games this year, and I really we have to focus on this year specifically because, like I said, it's his first time being the featured back. He's not splitting carries with anyone. It's all on him. And this Jaguars defense has given up rushing yards to the Texans, obviously. They gave up 85 yards to Mark Ingram and 25 yards to Phillip Lindsay in that game. So over 100 yards they were giving up there. Against the Broncos, they have another two-headed monster there with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. They gave up 95 yards rushing to those two backs combined. And then last week, like I said, that was the first time we ever see them sort of stop the run. However, they still did give up about 70 yards rushing. So, I mean, to the running backs, because then Kyler Murray had about 20 yards himself. So almost 90 rushing yards there again if you combine him, but I wouldn't count that. So to running backs, they've given up a lot of rushing yards. I think Joe Mixon rushing yards at 87.5 is definitely not a steal because you can't really guarantee everything. What if the Bengals have a game plan that's all rushing or all passing and they don't really rush the ball that much? That's what you never know about the NFL. But I think you'll see Joe Mixon get a lot of carries, especially since I think the Bengals will win, and then you're going to see them drawing out the clock a little bit more in the second half. So I think Joe Mixon will get a lot of rushing attempts. Rushing yards will come with that. So those would be my 2 safest bets, and if you are really wanting to bet the spread, I would definitely take Bengals minus 7.5 over Jaguars 7.5. I'm not confident in that. That's just me personally and what I would do. Let me know what you guys would do for your bets tonight. Let me know any other lines you're liking. Let me know what your fantasy lineups are if you have any of those tonight. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have a great day.